Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and I'm taking off to see if these fields are all finished being harvested, because when they harvest, they make all kinds of dust. So then we need to know whether to go ahead and wash our cars. It turned out my son washed our car by hand for us, which was really nice. So anyway, while we're flying around and looking at all these, I seem to have a frog in my throat this morning. I think it might be the dust. Anyway, so while we're flying around, I'll tell you another story. And I'm running out of stories, and I think I've told this one briefly, but I never told you all the details behind it. So let's get started. When I went to college, my first year of college, my folks paid the way. After that, I paid my own way, and we won't go into the reasons for that. But anyway, I lived in the dorm, and I went to Western Washington State College. And that year for homecoming, the Western Washington State College Vikings were going to play the Eastern Washington State College Indians for the homecoming game. And they had a homecoming skit night every year. And our dorm decided that we should have some kind of skit. And what their idea was for some Vikings to capture an Indian up on the stage and then haul him up the aisle to the foyer, and then up the stairs, and then down, and then hanging him off of the balcony. And so that was their plan, and I ended up being the Indian because I only weighed 135 pounds. So as it turned out, my grandfather had taught me how to weave rope, and so I was able to make myself a harness that would look like a rope would tie to the back of it, and then they could hang me over the edge. And literally dropped me over, and then I went through all the squirmings like a guy would if he was really getting hung. So, but first we had to test it and make sure it was going to work. So my roommate, who went to high school with me, and we were very active in gymnastics, and we were we could do all kinds of things. And I won't go into that. But anyway, so I made the harness, and then so we decided let's check it out by seeing if we could hang me on the door. So we opened the door to our dorm room. He stood on one side with the rope, and I stood on the other side with the rope hooked to the harness. And then it was the idea I was supposed to jump up, and then he would pull tight on the rope to see if it would hold me. Well, I jumped up, he pulled tight on the rope, and we pulled the hinges out of the doorpost. So that night we went to dinner and filled our pockets full of toothpicks. If you've never tried this, it works. And we got back to the dorm, and we stuffed toothpicks into all the screw holes, and then we put the door back on, and it worked fine. But we knew that wasn't going to work. So then they had just built a brand new science building, and on the back side of the science building, there was a catwalk, and it was second floor catwalk that went along the back side of the building, so that the professors could come out and stretch their arms or whatever, and they had nice glass window, or it was all glass on that side of their office. So anyway, that's how it was, and so we decided, okay, at nighttime when it's dark, we'll go down there, and we'll see if we can hang me from the catwalk. And so we put everything together. We got down there, and then he and I were able to. We were both able to jump up and get on each other's shoulders and stand up straight and walk around with the guy on his shoulders. And so, in order to get on the catwalk, I jumped up on his back, stood up on his shoulders, and he went over to the catwalk. And I grabbed a hold of, this is kind of what the catwalk looked like. Not exactly, but that's how it was made. It had a railing, and then it had square aluminum tubing, spaced about 6 or 8 inches apart. And so I got a hold of the aluminum tubing, and I shinted myself up, which wasn't hard. I got really good grades in rope climbing and gymnastics. I even got in trouble one time for climbing 2 ropes at the same time. Uh, oh, by the way, I'm aiming at, and I'll put an arrow in here. I'm aiming at the road that I was riding on when I crashed on my e-bike, and I'm still recovering from that. And so, but anyway, I started over in the right hand, and then I went, and somewhere about right in there is where I crashed. And then when I finally got myself together, I rode the bike with my arm dislocated, straight on down that road to the busy road where you see the cars going, and that was paved. And then I turned into this housing development and used their paved roads, and I came down this road, and then when it turned over, and then I went over to the area where it ended, and then got on our dirt road again and made my way on down the path and got home. It was about a 4-mile ride, and it was painful. So anyway, so I shinnied up, and I got up on the catwalk, and then he threw the rope up to me, and I doubled it over the railing, and then he climbed up the rope, and both of us, and then when he got high enough to grab those aluminum tubing railing parts, well, then he climbed himself on up and climbed over. And remember, now it's dark, and so we're getting the rope all untangled and getting it ready to put the harness on me, when all of a sudden we noticed there's water all over everything. I mean, everything is wet. And we couldn't figure it out, and we thought, what is this, because it was pretty dark out. So there was a light on in one of the offices further down the catwalk. So we walked down there, and sure enough, our hands were bleeding because of the sharp edges of the aluminum tubing. And as we had been climbing up, our hands had slipped a little bit, and the palms and the fingers they had little slits in them, and of course they were bleeding. So we decided that wasn't such a good idea. So we threw the rope over the railing and shinnied ourselves back down. And we decided, all right, we're just going to go ahead and get permission to use the railing in the auditorium and rehearse our skit. And the railing in the auditorium was, it was a what would you call it? A half wall that went along the front, and then it had a banister on top of it, kind of like in the picture, except that the banister was wood, and then it had square brass tubing, about 1.5 inch square pieces come up, and that held up the railing. So anyway, so got the guys together, about a half a dozen guys that were going to throw me over, and they were going to be the Vikings and throw me over, and then got them together on the day of the rehearsal. And took me in. We went up in the balcony, and I put the harness on, and then and what we did is we ran the harness underneath that railing, and then we tied the rope to the chairs, which were bolted to the floor. So then they picked me up and threw me over. Well, when they threw me over, we should have thought the sharp edges of the brass tubing cut the rope. And so instead of hanging there, I went straight down to the floor, landed on my feet, and without even thinking about it, sat down on my behind right there. And fortunately, the aisle in the balcony was right over an aisle on the floor. And so as it turned out, I landed on the floor instead of in the chairs, and so then we thought, okay, so we got a towel, and then we had to figure out how to wrap the towel around it really quickly. And so as it turned out, on skit night, there was a guy on the stage that was dressed the same as me. He was dressed like an Indian, and the Vikings got him and took him up the aisle and into the foyer. And then from the foyer, they brought him on up, and then I was waiting in the upstairs foyer, and they hauled me out. And while one guy tied the rope on put it underneath the railing and tied it to the chairs, another guy wrapped a towel around the railing, and they threw me over, and it worked perfect. I dangled and swung back and forth, and I even got my picture in the newsletter. So as it turned out, it was a success. Later on in life, when I had to have an x-ray of my chest, they wondered why looking at the front of me, my backbone seemed to be S-shaped. So anyway, that's the story, and I thank you for taking time to listen, and I want to thank you for watching my videos, and God bless.